The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
Welcome to another episode of The Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker and I happen to be in the Hamptons this week. Yes, the end of the summer, and I'm looking at a beautiful garden, and I've just been driving around in the Hamptons and it's stunning here, as many of you may already know. And I'm with a great friend of mine, Tom Astor, the co-host of The Shaken and Stirred Show, who is not in the Hamptons with me, but has a history of the Hamptons, don't you, Tom, in your family?
We do. I wish I was in the Hamptons. I am in Oxfordshire, in the Cotswolds, where it's very flat, it's kind of cold, there's a whiff of the fall coming in, and true to good old-fashioned English summer, we haven't really had one. We've been waiting, anticipation for the heat wave to arrive. This wonderful heat wave. Whenever the Met Office, which is people that do the weather here, whenever they start talking about that in June, you know that no heat wave is going to arrive. And it's just something that sort of keeps people from, becoming violent or something. I don't know. Anyway, we've had no summer. It's shit. The weather's been shit. We have weather. We don't have a climate. And the gardens look wonderful. Been quite a lot of rain. And what can I say? Yeah, having not travelled for 2 years now, I'm itching to go somewhere warm.
As long as you're only itching to go somewhere, you're not itching for some other reason, Tom, we're all good with that.
Well, itching for all sorts of reasons. So as you can see, I'm wearing a shirt, a sweater, and that would be, you get a gauge what it's like over here for our summer. But anyway,
yes. Sounds wonderful. But I mentioned that the Hamptons connection with you because I know that I think it's your great grandmother. Didn't she move a house that she had built in the Hamptons to England, to Sandwich, where she sort of house?
No, she copied the style. The Hamptons. That's sort of
copied the style. That's what it was. She copied the style, but it's a Hamptons house in Sandwich in England. When I was a child, Tom and I used to spend time together as kids, and I'd summer at his parents' house on the beach too, and my kids even have been there when they were younger. But it is a Hamptons house, and that was the very first time I'd even heard of the Hamptons. So I've always got this very fond memory of your folks' old home on the beach.
Yeah, lots of windows, south-facing, wonderful garden, everything south-facing, right next to the sea. But in England, so
everything other than the weather.
Other than the weather, so it had, and in the front of it, it had this wonderful kind of porch area cut into the sort of front of the house where this little terracey bit, which did actually have a big glass wall around it, projecting out of the front of the house for that reason, just to keep that English breeze off. So you could actually, if the sun did come out, you could light. It's like a sun trap, but it would keep that infernal cold wind away.
I have very fond memories, and the funny thing about what we do with the Shaken and Stirred Show, in many ways, it started in Sandwich, which is the name of the house, with the name what we called the house, because it probably had its own name, but we always called it Sandwich as the area. But you had a man who worked there called Snowy, and Snowy was a man who, he's actually, just the way it sounds, he was sort of white-haired old man, but obviously when he was younger he wasn't. But he used to serve us drinks. He made an incredible, I remember, everything from a Bloody Mary to great cocktails and what have you. And at cocktail hour, we'd go to your house and he would be there making drinks. And it was sort of that the very dawn of our earliest Shaken and Stirred moments in a way.
Yeah. Snowy, the butler, who sadly passed away 2 or 3 years ago now. He worked for my great grandmother when he was a kid. They say he always had a connection with the family, and my great grandmother used to go to this house in the Hamptons, which could sleep about 26 people, and she used to call it her summer cottage, which I think is also another kind of phrase that's taken out from America.
It is.
And you take a sort of skeleton staff of about 15 people. And he was one of the locals down there who was a kind of footman, and then he became a butler, and that was it. That was why we started nicknaming. Whenever we want to drink in each other's houses, we assume the role of Snowy.
So Tom is known as Snowy A, and I'm known as Snowy B, and these are the nicknames we've given each other. And we have another friend called Snowy D, who's Dawson is his last name. And so yeah, it literally comes full circle. Well, listen, Tom, what are you drinking right now? What would Snowy have made for you? Hopefully, he's made you something.
Snowy, well, I have my own. Yeah, I have had my drink made for me, as quite rightly predicted by Mel. She's made me a summer fruit. It's sort of twist on a Bellini, using fruit from the garden, some raspberries, and basically it's champagne with just crushed up fruit, black currants, and strawberries, black currants, and raspberry.
Delicious, absolutely delicious. Well, my friend here in the Hamptons has made me something that he calls a Ginger Rogers. Check that out. He wrote. I've got the whole write down of what it's made of: mint leaves, ginger syrup, which is a simple syrup that he made himself with ginger. And I've made that before. It's kind of fun, not too hard to do. You basically steep the ginger in the boiling simple syrup, and then when it cools down, after about half an hour, it infuses the ginger out of it. So it's got a great ginger flavour. London dry gin, 2 ounces of it, lemon juice, freshly squeezed, and then ginger ale and a mint sprig. And basically, you mull the mint leaves and the ginger syrup, and then you pour in, and then you add the gin and the lemon juice and the ice. And super simple, very delicious. Smells fantastic. Cheers, my man.
Cheers. It sounds like an unfinished drink. Cheers.
I know.
It sounds like, as a redhead, as a ginger, it sounds like it's slightly unfinished. Ginger Rogers what?
I know. Well, exactly. It's funny. You think Ginger Rogers, you think of the actress, don't you? I don't think it has anything to do with it.
I think with Ginger Rogers, I think it's something quite different.
Wow. You know what? And I hadn't even thought of that.
Come on.
I tried to keep it a clean show. I don't ever, never Roger the Ginger, so I would not know about Gingering Rogers or Ginger Rogers. Anyway, you're taking this down a complete rabbit hole, as usual. I think before we get to our fantastic guest, who I've known for years, booze news, people. Booze news. We've had all kinds of funny booze news on the Shaken and Stirred show. There's something about fast food chains and booze that I find hilarious, and I bring it up on Booze News quite regularly because it always seems like the two don't go together. But you may be familiar, many of you, that Dunkin' Donuts has had a relationship with Harpoon beer, and they're doing it again. They're introducing new beers, new Dunkin' Donut beers flavored after. I think they have one which is a maple cream blonde ale. They have a midnight American porter, which uses their coffee. They've got a pumpkin spice latte ale. So they're all named after the various things you can get at Dunkin' Donuts on a regular basis, but it's beer. So you're going in and having your donuts with beer, and they're also making, which is not such a surprise, a donut with beer, which I've heard of beer battered things. So that's not so shocking. But along with this news, IHOP, the pancake people, have decided to also serve alcohol, right? I guess, pancakes and alcohol, I mean, it's not such a shocker that you might have a mimosa or a glass of champagne with your breakfast, I guess is the point. It just seems so extraordinary that at an IHOP you would have a glass of champagne. But they've done a survey, and it turns out that over 60% of the adult customers would like some alcohol with their breakfast. So IHOP, the breakfast shop, has begun serving alcohol as of now. Shocking.
I the only alcohol in pancakes I can think of really when you go France, when they flambe. What are they called? When you flambe.
That's right, the flaming crêpe Suzette.
Crêpe Suzette, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, why settle for a morning coffee when you can enjoy a coffee-inspired beer? That's all I can say. Or a glass of champagne with your pancake. Our guest today is an actress, dancer, singer, entrepreneur, philanthropist. The list goes on and on. Well known for her role in High School Musical, which she probably is very bored of hearing at this point, but it comes up everywhere. She's had a stint on Dancing with the Stars. Tom, hey. The next dance is mine, I'm afraid. I know her personally for her work with the UN Foundation's Girl Up initiative. Please welcome the delightful and brilliant Monique Coleman. Monique, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
No, it's been, it's a long time coming. We have tried to organize photo shoots, get together, dinner. Yeah. I've invited you to event things I've had. It's not easy in this world to do anything, it seems. And finally now I've got you on the podcast, which is so fun. What are you drinking?
Today I have a kombucha. So
Fantastic.
It's a strawberry acai coconut. I'm hailing from Hawaii, so that felt very appropriate to have a little tropical type drink. But I actually really love kombucha because it's good for like gut health and things like that. So
Amazing. So we've got Hawaii, we've got New
Yes.
York, and we've got
Mhm.
Oxford, England on this right now.
Oh my goodness.
So we have major time zone differences here. This isn't your LA, New York, even London thing. We've got Hawaii. So what time is it for you right now?
It's 11 a.m.
11 a.m. My, as far as Tom and I are concerned, that's cocktail hour.
Sure.
So-
If I had some champagne, I definitely would be doing a little shaking and stirring.
Love the fact you're drinking a kombucha in what looks like a champagne glass. So,
Yeah, oh, for sure. I was like, I'm gonna at least be festive. Come on.
so full diva on the kombucha, which is fantastic, everyone. There you go. This is how Monique Coleman does it. Let's get into it. I've known you for a minute now, and I've always known you to be an incredibly kind, generous, and very deep person. And I kind of wanted to sort of take it back to you as a child growing up, and just to kind of get into what that might have been like for you. And because we're always interested in how a person is almost created, how they come into being who they are, and what journey that was like to some extent. So perhaps there are some learnings there, and would love to sort of start with that. I mean, I know you're from, what is it, South Carolina? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Take
I
us
love
back.
that. Yeah, I love that. As you were speaking, a lot of kind of thoughts swirled through my mind, because really it's about our identity. Like, who am I? And the first thing that came to my mind was that I was a lonely kid. I was a very lonely kid, and I lived in my imagination a lot. I'm an only child. I was raised by a single mother. And my experience was very much that I just struggled with kind of things that are very common, like self-esteem and things like that. But the second thought that came to mind was that I was hit by a car as well as a child.
Wow.
And so those two things are really interesting, that I grew up like with this awareness of my mortality, I guess, because, being so young, I was between 5 and 6 years old, and I was in New York, and it was kind of a freak incident where a car just spun out of control and came onto the sidewalk. So it wasn't like I ran out into the street or something. And I remember it, not vividly, but I do remember the experience. And I was walking home with my cousin, and it's interesting because I didn't think that shaped me.
Right.
And I actually didn't really tell many people about it. Like, as I got older, I didn't tell people, but I had the repercussions of that. I have just scars on my leg. And when I was actually on Dancing with the Stars, there was a day where we were in rehearsal and my partner touched me there. And I like flipped out on him. And I basically was like, oh no, I don't, like, you can't, no one could touch me there for about 20 years. This happened when I was a kid. So until I was in my mid to late 20s, no one could ever touch me there. And it's because I had stored the trauma in my body. So even though it wasn't something that I consciously wanted to lead with, because I never wanted people to feel sorry for me. As a little Black girl from South Carolina, I was like, I am strong, I'm independent. Like nothing has held me down or held me back. But what I didn't ever realize was that it also in a way shaped my fighter spirit and propelled me forward. And in some ways, all of the fighting that I do and all of the kind of appreciation that I have for the human body is connected to my own human spirit that had to fight for my body, because I had to relearn how to walk, at a very young age. So that's kind of what I think of. Is I spent a lot of time in a hospital, alone, isolated. My first experience with school was actually over the telephone, because this was, in the 80s. So there wasn't this option of being on a video chat. And a lot of my my adulthood has really been merging what is in my head with what is actually happening in reality, and making that the same thing. And I feel like finally at 40, I do feel like an integrated person who can look at my experiences as a child and own and accept all of them, and realize that that's essentially the source of my empathy. It's the source of my compassion. It's the root of my fight. And the experiences that I have had are valuable because there might be someone else who at some point needs to fight for themselves. And it's important that I don't withhold those kind of intimate parts of me, specifically as a child, because they're really impactful.
It's such an amazing story, and I did not know that. And it's it strikes me because I myself was also in a car accident when I was a kid, not as bad as yours, it sounds, but it's something I've never forgotten. I was crossing the road. I was about the same age as you, 6 or 7. And I remember the car, it was a Mercedes, and it just hit me straight in the face. I was about the top, as tall as the top of the car, as the body, the actual face of the car. And it struck me in the face and knocked all my teeth out. So I had no teeth as a kid for many years until they grew. Luckily, they had my baby teeth, so it didn't matter too much. But it was terrifying. And my parents, I remember being told off by my parents because I had sort of done what kids do and darted across the street without looking. And, basically it was, thank God the guy wasn't going too fast and had put his brakes on. But it was a combination of being told off by my parents, as well as being hit by a car. So I was sort of double in trouble for something that was up. But I've never, you don't really talk about it too often. You don't really bring these things up. But what you just said, it really helped you to sort of discuss it and even release it in a way. Did you have to have therapy to get there? Or what got you there?
I probably should have had therapy, but I didn't. I didn't have therapy. I had art. Art was my therapy. Yeah, art is the place that I, without going too much into it, I did struggle in terms of like my mom and I, our relationship, we were very close, but it was also at times very difficult. And mainly financially, we just couldn't afford certain things. And also at that time, I don't know that is something that like an African-American family just would have turned to, like, oh, this is what you need. There was a little bit more of a tough love, you can do this, you got this kind of attitude. But it wasn't until like a few years ago that I was like, oh yeah, that probably is something that would have been really helpful, is to be able to talk about that. But we didn't have those kinds of resources. So I would just, I was really strong, and my spirit was really big. And so at maybe like 3rd or 4th grade, I had a teacher, 3rd grade actually, my teacher, Miss Tanya Jones. She pulled my mother aside and basically said, listen, your daughter can't stop talking in class, but I don't think it's because she's bad. I really think she needs an outlet. And we immediately started taking piano lessons and dance classes and things like that. And to the people who are listening, you might think to yourself, well, that's really expensive. But my mother also taught me that money should never hold you back from whatever you want to pursue. And so I was always on scholarships. We always found a way for me to do the things that lit me up, to find free programs, to be able to participate in the same activities as other kids, or to do the things that would help me thrive and flourish, regardless of how expensive they were. And dancing was one of them. And I remember I would be in dance class, and sometimes I would flex my leg or I would do things, and I would run out of the room crying. And I would just, and I think that was in a way like that cathartic release. And then I'd come back and pick it right back up and keep going. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the resilience. I also, though, do feel sad for that little girl sometimes as well, that I didn't get to just feel the pain for what it was, and that I constantly had the sense that my pain wasn't valid and I just needed to kind of get over it.
I mean, it's probably very common though, that process. I mean, I think
very much so.
I mean, it's similar to mine. I mean, I kind of hid it, and then I thought I had done something wrong and I was bad, and I'd done something, so mustn't talk about it because it would bring up the fact that I had been bad, and that's why I was hurt. So let's never talk about it. And there's just so many times. I mean, my wife was hit by a car, and she rarely talks about it, because oftentimes when you're hit by a car, it seems specifically that kind of accident is such a unusual trauma. And it's so dramatic, and it could have been life. It could have ended your life. Had a car been going a couple of miles an hour faster, hit you in a slightly different way, or anything. But anyway, it's an interesting thing. I guess you kind of answered my next question a little bit when you started to explain how probably people who are listening thought, well, that's expensive and that's all the rest of it. Because I was sort of going down that way too, thinking to myself that someone who does come from a poorer background, making the decision to become an actress or an artist even is a leap.
Right.
It's like, get a real job. So
right.
there's that.
Right. And
Go, so please, so explain how that happened, how you got to do that. And then I get it, your mother was, enabled you to get out there and do that, or did she? Maybe I'm putting words.
No, she absolutely did. It was undeniable. When you see those kids and you're just like, you are a performer through and through. There's just nothing else for you to do on the planet. That was me. So before the accident and even after, I was always putting on performances in the living room. I was that kid that was singing songs. I remember Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future. Like that. That was my favorite song. That and I'm coming up, Lord. Like I was this like deep soul that loved like soul and gospel and Whitney. And I would come out and I would just do performances, and I would do performances in school about absolutely nothing. My teachers, and that's what was so beautiful about my teacher, was that she did direct that energy, because other teachers were just like, she needs to stop. Like I'm in science class and we're trying to learn the periodic table, and I'm like standing on the radiator just being like, well, actually, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about, sweetheart. But it was definitely something that was obviously my destiny. And my mother just, and if I really, really pull back and allow myself to be slightly vulnerable, which I always am, but on my mother's behalf, I also think that part of it was, in a way, she was giving me things that she didn't have. And I can't speak for her, but I do believe that is part of it, is that there were certain limitations that, she was one of 5. There were certain limitations that she had in her life that she didn't want me to inherit from her. And so she always prioritized purpose. She told me at a very young age, you matter. You have a purpose. You have a purpose, and you're going to find that purpose. And she made me feel, even when I didn't believe it, which I mostly didn't, and sometimes like still struggle, because just I don't know why. I was just kind of built this way. And my goal is to let this go. Like, as I've been trying to let it go for years, and then it kind of creeps back up, is this sort of issue with esteem, because no matter how much she told me that I could do it and I was great, I still, kind of struggled with that. But through the actual doing plays, doing theater, dancing, it was almost like, it was like what therapy would do. It helped mellow me out. It helped me stay grounded. It helped me stay hopeful. And it was the place where I felt the most alive. Also, and this is, speaks to the time, emotions weren't really allowed in my house. Like feelings, there were only like a handful of feelings that you were allowed to feel. And anger, deep sadness, those were not safe things to feel. And so acting was a place where I could be someone that I wasn't able to be in my day-to-day life. And once it was kind of evident that there was a gift there was nothing that we were going to do to keep me from doing that, because it was just like obvious.
I find it so fascinating with I've met people, for example, who have suffered from things like multiple personalities, and it's often through trauma, right, where they then hide it with other personalities that personality went through that trauma, and it wasn't me, they did, right? So they develop multiple personalities. Each personality deals with a different thing in one's life. And it was just when you started to talk about obviously having the opportunity to act and perform, and therefore perhaps being able to perform a character that is angry, or perhaps performing a character who is deeply depressed, but it's a performance, so you can get into the role. It's almost in itself, like we were talking about, the sort of the therapeutic aspect of it. Can acting be a form of art therapy, I guess, for argument's sake?
The answer is, I believe yes, but I don't know that it should be.
Right. Why?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why?
Yeah, I think that, for a long time, I would say that it wasn't what I did, it's who I am. And I think that there's something dangerous about that. I think that it is important as individuals that we do learn to own our own story, because when you own your story, you can own the consequences and you can own the triumphs as well. And I feel as though in some instances, I haven't allowed myself to fully feel either, because if you don't allow yourself to feel and experience the negative parts of life, the things that you don't, that weren't pretty, then you also don't necessarily get to feel the full breadth of the joy that's actually available to you. And you kind of live in this in between neutral space where the exterior world is more of your measuring stick for who you are than who you actually are. And so, yes, I do think that it's a great place to start, and it's a great place to put things. Also, something my husband said along, like, kind of early in our relationship, is he looked at me one day, and he's a delicious man. So, and I hope it comes out the way that he meant it, because it offended me at first. But he said, "Oh, you need an audience." And I was like, and he was like, "What I mean by that is you have more to give than one person can receive. I can't be everything and all things for you. Your being is so big that you need an audience." And when I really got over being like, "What you mean you can't be my everything?" That has changed my life, because I do need an audience, because there's 12 books in me. There's so many characters, and there's so much that I've personally been through, and there's things that have happened that I don't believe were just for me. I do believe that they are bigger than me, and that they were for humanity. And as artists, we kind of open ourselves up. We make ourselves this vessel to allow these things to come through us, which is why I think that the therapy is important, separate of the art, is because when you mix the two up, then it kind of reconfigures your own being, versus allowing these things to come to you and then come through you. Then we all can realize the ways that we are connected, and we're not stuck. Because I think, it's a great place to hide. And when you hide, that becomes shame. Art brings light to our dark places. And once you apply light to it, then there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. That's what healing really is. And I'm at this point in my life, I'm no longer in the business of hiding. I'm in the business of healing. And healing comes through allowing and fully processing something, not as a character, but as a human being. And then looking at my life and thinking, I kind of reverse it and look at how I approach a character helps me approach my own life and look at what are my own tragic flaws? What is my objective in this moment? What am I going for? And how am I projecting things onto the people around me to make me something, instead of just, owning my own shit, really.
It's such a unique perspective on everything. I mean, I feel that, I'm curious with you, because you always, I've literally watched some interviews of you from years ago, and you even, I don't know how long ago it's been since, High School Musical and all that kind of stuff, but you were saying incredibly profound, deep things straight out of the gate. And some of your earliest interviews that I read, you would stop and you would immediately kind of change the conversation towards helping people and using the platform that you had to make the world a better place. And this was your mission pretty much from a very early on. And that's unusual. People don't have that kind of empathy or, compassion for humanity. I hate to say it, but my experience has been, unfortunately, mostly the reverse. People tend to be quite self-centered, and although there's kindness and goodness everywhere, there is also just a lot of people who look out for the number one first and foremost. And it's, where did that come from with you? I mean, obviously you have your life and your experiences, but I'm just curious as to if was there a pivotal moment, or was there something that made you think, I need to actually go out there and make a difference?
I wish that I knew, because I was that kid, speaking of childhood, I was that kid that people always said was wise beyond my years. Where did you get this from? And for me, it is my faith, but I don't mean that in a religious context. It's so much more than that. It's coming into the world as a seeker. I think I came in this desire to understand and to seek. One memory that comes to mind, though, was the first time I ever heard Martin Luther King Jr. speak. and I'm sure that we were probably in 3rd or 4th grade and learning, it was Black History Month or something. And I heard him speak, and I remember thinking, I was mad because I thought, this man said all the best things a person could ever say. What is the point of living? I literally was like, you can't top that. You cannot top his existence. Like, I could just die. Like, what is my point? But I think that there's something to that, because I tell young people all the time, what you see in others is also in you. I didn't know that then. But I didn't realize that by looking at someone like Martin Luther King Jr. and feeling like this, like, irritation, like, obviously awe and esteem, but then like this deep irritation as well, because I felt like I had been robbed of my future, says a lot. At like 8, I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I even going to say? Like, I'm never going to write an amazing speech. I'm never going to be able to say anything that impacts as many people as he impacted. It's obvious to me that, like, oh, that was kind of this awakening, that there was that desire, that there was that deep desire to speak to people. I value words so much. Of the things I've wanted to be, if I wasn't an actor, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. I also, thought I could be a psychologist. Absolutely not. A lawyer, but mainly because I wanted to do opening and closing speeches, but also a speech pathologist. I love words. I love language. I love the ability, and not that that's what a speech pathologist does, but just speaking. That's something that was just very profound to me. So yeah, I think it's just, it's how I was wired, and it's how I was wired, but then also how I was nurtured. That part of me was nurtured and cultivated. My mother really did an amazing job of protecting that part and making sure that even when I doubted myself, even when I didn't feel like what I said mattered. And also, I just want to say thank you, Nigel, too, because that means a lot to me. I have spoken so many places, and when I was younger, it made me nerdy, and that being nerdy was not cool. It made me feel like I didn't fit in. And I was the kid that, everyone else is like giving each other Valentines, and I'm like, I'm going to write you a whole poem. And then they would be like, you're so weird. And it's only now that I think I've kind of caught up to who I've always been, and stopped being afraid of that, but knowing that that's truly my greatest strength. And it's just kind of what my mission has always been.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I heard you say something very interesting, which I totally agree with, actually. And it's just common sense in a way, but it's not something which is really spoken that much. Which is, you were talking about giving advice to people who perhaps feel inadequate, or feel down, or feel weak, or feel depressed. And your advice was, if I'm quoting you correctly, was that for people to go to basically give back in order to receive. It was,
yes,
go out there and find a charity, an organization that you can donate your time to, volunteer, and that you believe you said that would give you the sort of the right almost to stand up tall, and you've done something good. You have a reason for looking yourself in the mirror. I mean, it was something about removing mirrors in your life, or something else.
Yes.
I remember this interview you did, and it just stuck with me, because I'm like, that's exactly right. I mean, I'd love for you to go into that a little bit.
I don't remember where I was or what that was, but I do specifically remember talking about getting out of the mirror and getting into service specifically. And it's because, especially when you're young, you spend so much time, your body's changing. Like it's not, there's nothing wrong with any of these things, by the way. It's very normal and natural. I think what's wrong is that we don't talk about it and normalize it. But as a young person, you're evolving. And so you're watching yourself change in every stage of your life. Excuse me, it's not even being young. I just turned 40, and I look in the mirror sometimes and I'm like, is that another gray? Oh my God. So we're constantly seeing ourselves and redefining ourselves. But I think it's important to get out of, yes, you should be the center of your own life in a sense, but at the same time, realizing that the things that you're struggling with, sometimes the fastest way to separate yourself from them is to direct your attention elsewhere and to direct your attention to being of service, because when you are of service, you recognize that you are of value. Mm-hmm. That no matter what you have, you do have something to give. Even if all that you can give is your presence has value. Look at the times that we are living in. And I'm sure, we don't want to talk about it and continue to, it's everywhere. We can't, turn on the television or listen to anything without seeing it. But, it's really, right now is a time for us to really understand that just being in the presence of another person, that the value that has for our elderly, the value that has, coming out of isolation. We really, I think, all kind of got this moment of really seeing how fragile we all are and how fragile this whole thing is. And to think that you don't have something of value, the easiest way to recognize that is not true is to be in the face of someone who needs you that day. And then I do find that it is cyclical. It gives back to you. And it's not that you give to receive, but everything that we do in some ways does come back and impact us. And I think, looking at what you can do for others and what you can do to just make someone else smile, to, bring some kindness, bring some joy, bring some prosperity. You can't stay in like a ugly, dark, or negative place when you're doing that. It's just that reminder that, we're all a part of something that we didn't create ourselves. And so our pain, our problems, the stuff that we go through, we sometimes get stuck in them because we don't know that we're not supposed to sit in our corner. It's what connects us. Very weird. I don't mean this, again, also in a religious way, but I say that God lives in the gap. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you actually need to create the space for the connection to happen. Our world crumbled and now the coral reef is coming back. Like things have happened so that we could be connected through our grief, through our stories, through our car accidents, through our experiences. We then get to be connected to one another. We have this perception like we're supposed to everything's supposed to be great. And then we're just supposed to be great together. And then when it's not all great, then something's actually wrong. That's not necessarily true. It's when it's not great that you get to step up. It's when it's not great that you get to find out or go inward and see what you're made of and who you actually are. Everything being great all the time, I don't think really should be the goal anymore. It's that when it isn't great, we have the tools, we have the resources, we have the community, we have the outlets to be able to reconnect to one another, because this is about our human experience. We are here to experience life, to experience one another, to elevate this planet and hopefully leave it a little bit better than when we came. But if there's no problems, then there's no solutions. And if there's no solutions, then, we can all sit on an island together and that would be awesome if that's what the world was going to look like, but that's not what it actually is. So I look at pain and these things very differently and say, no, get out of the mirror, get out of your own head, get out of your own experience and get into your body, get in your body and get out of your head, in your body, and then get your body out into the world. I've never said that before, but that is how I feel.
I was going to say, you literally, you could give Martin Luther King a run for his money. By the way, you are brilliant. I started at the very beginning saying how brilliant you are, and this is why, people. This is Monique Coleman at her best. You just speak so eloquently, and you cut straight through it, and I think it's so refreshing and so important. It's not easy to verbalize the way you do, and you do it in such an incredibly clear way. So I just appreciate.
Or money, the concept of getting out of your head into your body is very difficult for Nigel as well, because he spends quite a lot of time in his body, looking at that side of it. He needs to get out of that back into his head, actually. Work both ways.
Trying to go the other way, right? Trying to get back in my head, out of this body. Yeah, absolutely. We all have our problems, Tom. We're going to do it. So, shaken and stirrers, have you ever had a drink or more and woken up with a headache, feeling foggy,
or with an upset stomach, well, guess what? It's alcohol metabolism that's the key, not dehydration. So enzymes in the liver actually metabolize alcohol, turning it from toxin to a harmless substance. And unfortunately, as we mature, we make fewer of these enzymes, slowing our metabolism. However, by promoting the enzymes that power alcohol metabolism, we can actually neutralize more toxins. And wait for it. H-Proof is here to help. The Anytime You Drink vitamin is your new favorite nightcap. These chewable vitamins support alcohol metabolism and help keep your liver happy. Simply take 2 after your last drink for a lighter, brighter morning. H-Proof is offering our listeners 20% off their first order with code NIGEL, that's NIGEL, at h-proof.com for 20% off your first order. Cheers tonight, crush tomorrow.
You also do a lot of mentoring, and I know that one of our friends, mutual friends, Dominic Fishback, an actress who's become incredibly successful, who I first met actually through Girl Up at the United Nations when she was performing with Girl Be Heard, a sort of a spoken word group that talks about racial injustice and gender equality and all those sorts of things. And she was incredible. And I had gone straight up to her afterwards and sort of just said, "Hi, I'd like to meet you." And she was literally just a young girl at the time. And and I said, "Can I photograph you?" And I've always been someone who, if I meet someone who's just, I think, brilliant or interesting or fascinating, I want to sort of, have them in my life in some way. So I never hesitate to just go up and say, "Hi, can I meet you? Can I know you?" And she's been a friend ever since. And she's in your life too. You've been helping mentor her. And, what is that experience like? I mean, obviously with your very and growing up as just a single child in a one-parent family, was it very important for you to realize that people need people, you need help, you need someone there for you?
Wow. I promise you, Nigel, this is the first time that I've ever connected those two things as a single thought. Yes. The answer is yes. I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing, but that is exactly what it is. There's a phrase, I have no idea where it comes from. I really should look it up, but it says, we teach what we most need to learn. We give what we most need, right? So I didn't even consider the fact that knowing that we need each other deeply, especially as an only, I saw that manifest in my ability to become fast friends with people and to have family everywhere. I really can't go anywhere and not have a tribe. I now am developing my true kind of nucleus of what that looks like. But prior to that, I was just adopted by everybody. I'm just like this person who goes around, and I've got and vastly different people. I mean, I'm talking from Crown Heights, Brooklyn, my Jewish family over there, to like an ashram that I've been to. It's so varied because I never felt that my identity was connected to my siblings. I noticed that a lot with people, that they are very, I'm the middle child, I'm the only child, I'm the this, whatever. And for me, it was just like, I just exist in this world as myself, and I go where I want and I do what I can. And but now, as that I'm older, I didn't realize that it has manifested in making sure that the next generation doesn't fall into some of the same pitfalls that I did, that I only did because I wasn't allowed. And I don't mean by any specific person, I just mean I hadn't permissioned myself. And I realized that sometimes we need someone to permission us to feel something completely. So when I was in High School Musical, I was, by the end of it, the loneliest, the furthest from my center that I had been since before I ever started. It was that finally everything that I'd ever wanted was here, and it didn't make me like myself. It didn't make my problems go away. I still didn't have a boyfriend. I still like things didn't just magically appear. My relationship with my father wasn't just naturally healed. The tension or relationship with my mother wasn't just naturally perfect. Things were exactly the same, if not in a way worse, because now there was all this confusion. How can I spend my whole life dedicated to something? How can I put every fiber of my being into being the best version of myself as I saw it at that time, which was through the lens of accolades, which is not a proper lens, but it just is what it is. And I think a lot of people relate to that, thinking that if I have this, if I do that, if I achieve this, that's going to mean that I matter. Experiencing that and not being able to tell anybody that I'm crying under the stage, not being able to let anybody know the loneliness that it was to be on tour, to not know how to manage my own money, to not know any of these things. I think inherently I did it. I didn't know that this was the case, but it did become my mission to help girls like Dominique Fishback. Another one of my dear friends is Alexis Wren, who's, Alexis, yeah, she's a stunning model. Allison Stoner, and it's funny because we're all like between 10 and 15 years apart, but I make sure that they have a safe space to say what they're really thinking and feeling, that maybe the average person might look and think, you're sitting in a seat of such privilege. How could you possibly have a problem? How could you possibly, because everyone thinks that money's going to solve everything. Everyone thinks that, having acclaim or fame or success is going to solve your problems. And I know firsthand that it doesn't. And it has been difficult at times because, obviously I'm a human. And so the ego gets involved and I'm looking and, Dom's been calling me for years, every time she would leave an agent, every time she would, be in a situation where she was standing up for herself or someone was making her feel as though she was being too much, I was able to talk her through experiences that I didn't have anybody to talk me through. I was able to be brave through her experience by holding space and not getting involved, but looking and going, yeah, you do deserve that. And then now what's so gorgeous is that it's almost like it's reverse mentorship and it's going the other way. And I'm looking at her star rise and I'm seeing that she's going to be the face, she's the new girl in the Transformers franchise. And to know that growing up, I never would have thought that would have even been possible at all. So to now see that you can plant a seed somewhere and then that seed can grow into something so beautiful. And then that thing that it grows into can feed you back. It's so remarkable. I can't even describe what it feels like. It's like I see these young people and their success is my success. And I had one of them say to me recently, Mo, I'm so sorry because the last 10 years I've kind of not been around. You've seen me, the people that know me and love me have seen me, but I haven't really been seen in a way that's as visible or prominent as some others in that kind of tangible, in that sort of way. But at the same time, I had someone say, you didn't have time to waste on someone's set because the seeds that you needed to plant and the people that you needed to nurture were going to do so much that was your position at that time. And that has been your position. So it feels really beautiful to see that the people that I have poured into and that I have had private conversations with and let cry on my shoulder and cried on their shoulders, that now we are all in this place where it's almost as if no time has passed. And I no longer look at this space in my career as a gap that everybody else around me is doing something and being so successful at the art of it. Obviously, in terms of leadership and advocacy and all of that, I've never stopped. But in terms of being an artist, I'm now seeing that the ways that I've kind of nurtured and mentored other people to fight for their position in this industry has now come full circle, because in a way, now we're just friends and I'm not needed in the same way. And I'm left with myself in such a gorgeous way to now go, you know what? I'm going to dust off some of my dormant dreams. I'm going to tell myself some of the things that I've said to other people over these years. And I'm going to be this bright I'm going to let myself be all the things that I've given a container for. I've taken it's the same as the acting. I've taken my inner being and I've given it to these other places for it to flourish. And now where I am in my life is I'm going and I'm collecting those pieces. I'm collecting that fruit. I'm allowing the places that have poured into me, that I've poured into, to pour back into me, and for us to all be able to do it together.
Goodness me, what a beautiful thing to say. And it's, you know, it's funny when I hear what you say. You know, I've got children, and you sound like a parent. You know, you sound very parental, and you know, and obviously you pour into your children, and they grow up, and they hopefully succeed, and they flourish. And actually, often with a lot of parents, I feel too, they feel that moment too, when they leave home in a way and do their thing, that then it's time to look back at yourself and care for yourself. And it's such an important thing. And just literally what you just said there was that journey, but with people not necessarily your own direct kin, but it doesn't matter. We're all family, and I think that's a very special thing that you're doing. You know, and that's how I've seen it when I've watched you, and I see how you are. And I see how you are with people, and the incredible intensity in which you gaze at them and look at them and talk to them, which is is of someone where you love them, and that's very special and unique. And it's not easy to do that unless you really truly love yourself in the right way too. So you can't do that successfully, you know, without loving yourself. And I think that's something which we don't. It's very hard to explain to people. And it's something and it's a constant struggle, I would imagine too, right? To remind yourself to love yourself, and
Yes,
and that you kind of alluded to that too, where you need to turn it back on yourself too and give to yourself. You can't constantly be offering. It has to go both ways. I'm just there's so much to you, and there's so many different things. We haven't even talked about any of your acting career, any of that kind of stuff, what you've got going on. I know you've got a new children's book coming out. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But I guess before we kind of get there too, you've obviously worked in philanthropy and all these great organizations, and it's not just Girl Up. I know you do other stuff too with youth movements and what have you. But do you see a change? I mean, I've been to a lot of these, sort of galas for Girl Up and events for Girl Up, and it often seems that we've taken two steps back half the time, and with obviously the past administration and what have you, it felt very much that way. Do you see a light in the future? I mean, where I'd love to just take your gauge of where you see the world is at right now.
Definitely. I have an enormous amount of hope. Enormous amount of hope. We have to. I see that we're never, in a way, going to, every problem that we solve creates new problems. And I think it's a tragedy to not recognize that, to not look and say, even the solutions that we are creating for our planet today, with divesting from fossil fuels and, moving into clean energy and electric and so forth, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, there's going to be some kid somewhere saying, I can't believe they put all this space waste up here. I can't believe that they didn't think about that in advance. What is wrong with you? That is what it is to be alive. That is what it is. We are here, to me, we're here to tend to this beautiful Gaia, this beautiful ball that we're just floating on in space. We're here to tend to her and nurture her and love each other and love ourselves. And I do see progress. That progress, it's like when you look at younger generations, you kind of get to see where we are. And you see Greta, and you see Yara, and you see these like incredible Dom when you met her. For as long as people are, making new people, yeah, there's a lot to be hopeful for. I think, yes, we revert, but we revert in order to see where we actually are, so that it isn't a fantasy. It's easy for us to all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and think like, oh, this is wonderful, everything's great, because we can't see it. What happened in our last administration is that it showed us what is actually here and what is unhealed and untapped and needs to be dealt with. We are a very fear-based society, and we're afraid of a lot of things, and we're afraid of ourselves, and we are afraid of the truth. But I think for as long as there are new people on this planet, for as long as there are people who are relentless about the pursuit of joy, love, compassion, kindness, purpose, we have to be hopeful. I have to be hopeful.
Do you know, Monique, it's funny, just on that topic of as long as there are new people, you mentioned that, we've actually had multiple experts on Shaken and Stirred show who are, and when I say experts, doesn't make them right or correct, it just gives them a field of which they are an expert in, right? But several have mentioned the fact that the only way to save the world, and I'm talking about an expert sort of environmentalist types as well, is that we stop making new people.
Oh, interesting.
Is that the one of the biggest problems we have is overpopulation?
And I understand that fully.
Just curiously enough, I thought I'd throw that out there because
no, I love that, and I understand that in the context of stress on the planet and so forth. And when I say new people, I don't mean you got to go, make babies. It's that we've been so negligent with what we have. We've been so. That's why, to pivot, that's why I'm moving my efforts to children. It's not about having children. It's very similar to what you were saying about how the life cycle that I was speaking of mentorship was mirrors being parental. It's that there are ideas floating around that need bodies to execute them. There are things that are in our atmosphere that we are not activating and implementing and actually doing. And if we did them and we believed them, I do believe that there would be change. So this isn't about procreation. This isn't about, populating. It's really more about the fact that I believe that every generation gets better, smarter, and is more equipped to handle what is there. So it's, for me, it's, I guess, more of an issue of education than reproduction. It's about education and going and looking at what is education, who is educating, and how is education going to change moving forward with this technological evolution that we are in the midst of currently, and how do we teach, nurture, facilitate in such a way that allows youth, because I really do believe in the power of young people, that allows young people to flourish as they grow into being people who are wise and capable of running companies and foundations and actually putting their stake in the ground in some way. For far too long, we've treated children like children, not in the sense of their innocence. I do not believe in robbing kids of their absolute innocence. And it actually more and more is becoming disturbing and upsetting to me, the weight and the pressure that we're putting on this generation to save the world. So it's a very delicate balance where I do believe in the power of youth. I do believe in their capacity. I also, though, believe that we need to not use them as an excuse and as a scapegoat to not do our own work as well. So to really, I think maybe what I really mean is that it's about bridging intergenerational gaps, and it's about empowering younger and younger and younger people, and not just empowering them in word, but also investing in them, investing financially also in their ideas, helping them create their businesses and do the things that they want to do. Because I think that there's a moment where life just gets really real. We had that moment very early on, but not everybody does. And there comes a time where you're like, oh, now I no longer get to be the dreamer. Now I no longer get to live in my imagination and just be this free spirit. And when that shift happens and you start operating the world from that place, it gets very small and very limited. And I think that children's imagination and young people's passion is what we need to tap into, and then combine that with our experience, with our access to resources, and use all of that to be able to move forward. But you cannot do that if you look down on young people. You can't do that if you think that they're apathetic and you don't believe in them. You have to believe in them. You have to actually think that like they really are capable and believe in them. And so much so that you're willing to bet on them. And I'm betting on them, and I will always bet on them forever and ever and ever. Like I came in knowing that I was here for children and for young people. So that is really what I mean. And I do understand these experts saying like, whoa, we kind of, but that it's that way with everything, with people, with our farming, with, we've just kind of, in a way, I actually think it goes back to almost a collective self-esteem. At some point, we decided that we needed something outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel like we have value. And we got bigger and better and more and taller buildings and more stuff. And we started covering up the earth instead of like listening to her and listening to one another.
The earth could never be a hymn, could it? I said the earth could never be a hymn. I know, Mother Earth.
No.
It's funny.
No,
sorry, guys.
Our mama. We love our Mians. But no, she's a mama.
I've got to say, I love it. Whenever you get I guess you mimic yourself getting angry or whatever. You put on this hilarious voice. Is that actually how you sound when you get angry, when you're pissed, or when you're mad? That's what comes out, because every time you've done it on the show so far, you've gone like, wah! And you go off, and it's like, I'm like, I don't believe that's really how you are when you get mad.
Interesting. Anger is not an emotion that arises often. And I think I try to make light of, or like I use humor as a way to diffuse the weight of things. I think I didn't even know I was doing it, but yeah, I do. I use humor
I'm a
to
special
soften.
way every time you would anything that was like historical reference to when something happened, a conversation was being had, or when your husband who was your boyfriend said something to you and you were upset by it. You have the same certain accent that you go straight into this voice, and it's of a different time, different place, different moment, a different Monique even. And I'm like, I was just like,
I definitely have about 15 different characters in here, just so you do know.
We were talking about multiple personalities at the very beginning. We're right back where we started. Look, before we let you go, I would love to talk a little bit about your book too. You have an upcoming kids book. When's that coming out?
I don't know yet. So if anyone's listening that can help me, call me. We're just putting it together. I wrote it last year. It's called Affirmations Alphabet. And it is using the alphabet as a guidepost to impart different ideas to young people. It's got a slightly spiritual undertone, because I have a spiritual undertone, but it's really just about giving them the tools to be able to speak life over themselves, and their parents the tools to be able to speak life over their children. And what I mean by speak life over is essentially that I believe in the power of words, and I think that they matter. And when we say things like, I'm awful, things are like, I'm bad, or you tell your child you're bad, or, you're this or that, we sometimes internalize these things. And so this is to give a guidepost. I'm amazing. I'm awesome. I'm aligned to my highest good. I'm brave. I'm bold. I'm beautiful. I believe I can do anything I put my mind to. And it continues on from there. And it has some references that are also personal to me. Just as Martin marched and Rosa sat, I stand for justice with every step. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. But it's my first children's book, and it just kind of came through me one day, and I'm now in the process of kind of trying to figure out, my manager and I are trying to figure out, like, okay, so now that we have the book, like, what do we do next? So yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm assuming you have a publisher. Not yet.
Not yet.
I can probably help you with that. So we should talk later on the publishing.
Yes, please.
Publishing friends and what have you, so we can try and figure that out. But also, what age group is the book for?
It's really it's all ages, honestly. I've read it to several different people. I mean, it really is for all ages. It's like, because I love children's books, like as an adult. So it's for adult children, like it's for children. but like for the child in also all of us. Because I do think that the child does live within all of us if we allow it to.
We allow it to, right? Absolutely. We all try and maintain that inner child. We should. It's a book for the ages. How about that?
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Look, before we let you go, we've got something on the show called Last Orders. Super fun, easy. Although, it could be as easy or as hard as you want it to be, right? So, first one, if there was one place or time in history that you could go back to, where would it be and why?
For some reason, the 20s came to mind. And I don't know, I think, and this is so shallow, but I think it's because the outfits came to my mind.
Bloody good reason. It's a damn good reason. There's flapper dresses. See?
Yes, I was like, where do I want to be? And I was like, I just kind of want to be in a little dress with a microphone, with a little flower in my hair.
You want to shimmy. I get it.
Yeah, I want to shimmy. Yeah.
Who doesn't want to shimmy? Okay.
And I want to be in one of those old cars. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Super sexy and romantic and nostalgic, all those things. I get it. I love it. I love the music from that era too. If you had to describe yourself as a kitchen utensil, which one would you be and why?
A kitchen utensil. Oh my gosh. I'm like trying to think of what kitchen utensils even are. I'd be maybe one of those little mixer things, like the little,
like a blender of some sort?
Yeah.
Magimix?
Maybe a Magimix.
Never seen anyone give so much thought to this question before.
I just don't even know. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I just, you know what it is that I this is why I didn't do well in school. I overthink the question and then my mind goes blank and I'm like, what is a kitchen utensil? I would be, I'd be a knife set.
There you go. A knife set, people.
To cut right through it.
Slice right through life. Well done. Finally, guys, we got the kitchen utensil out of Monique. Okay, in the movie of your life, who would you have play you?
I'm going to say Dom.
I knew you would.
Yeah.
And just because you love her or because you know that she'd get right into your character?
She'd get right into my character and I'd love to see myself through her eyes.
Yeah, well, she's a phenomenal choice. And I could have answered that question for you anyway. So what gets your goat and what floats your boat?
What does it mean to get your goat? Like get your goat.
Like upset you.
Injustice of any kind. Yeah.
And floats the boat?
Love, nature, connection, connecting deeply to people. That floats my boat.
There you go. You heard it right here from Monique Coleman. Shaken and Stirred show floats her boat. Can't get a better endorsement than that, Tommy boy. Okay, final question. Shaken or stirred?
Shaken.
She's shaking it, people. We're going to have to get that clip for sure. We got a nice little shimmy right there. All right.
Yeah.
Monique Coleman. Monique, thanks so much for coming on the Shaken and Stirred show. You are such a pleasure, such a delight. We wish you the best of luck with everything. We'll be looking out for your book, so please send it along. And you and I should have a little chat about publishers on the side. We'll hit each other up. Everybody, Shaken and Stirred show on Instagram at the Shaken and Stirred show. Fantastic. Thanks so much. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
See ya.